Hello guys and welcome back to the UtdDistrict YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be previewing the upcoming game against Arsenal, and it's a bit of a scary one for United fans, and we've got James in to have their corner and give some opinions from their side, and me and Yusuf will hopefully be trying to make an argument on how United can approach this game. First of all, I kind of want to address both teams' starts of the season. James, it's not been amazing for Arsenal. I know you've got 7 points on the board, but is it kind of a tweak in Arteta's system which has been part of the slow start? What would you say has been the reason?
It's a multitude of things. It's very hard to put it down to one thing, and I'm sure people would love to put it down to a single thing. Say it's Havertz's fault. Say it's the fact that Partey's been right back. It's several things. Havertz, I don't think was very good against Fulham, but also we accumulated about 3 expected goals in that game, and we only conceded, I think it was about 0.5. So realistically, on any other day, we should have won that game. We conceded we've been conceding a ridiculous amount of set pieces recently. It's a huge problem, and we conceded a sloppy mistake. And these kind of mistakes, Man City, I would say don't make. Kyle Walker made one at the weekend, but they are always able to make amends. But yeah, I just think we've kind of been coasting into the start of the season. I don't know if it's an arrogance or just complacency, but we haven't been at the levels that we started last season. Even though if you look at the actual numbers, we've been better this season. There's just something. We don't look as focused. We don't look as motivated as we did at the start of last season. I guess maybe it's a case of we were overexcited last season and that's why we burnt out. But this season, because we're kind of trying to be more controlled in the way we're playing, that's kind of hindering us in the sense that we're playing within ourselves, and at times I think we need to push a little bit harder. Also, I feel like people will naturally say, oh, the system's changed, this and that. It doesn't help that Zinchenko's not been fit. I think if Zinchenko was fit and available, I rate him very highly. I think things would be a little bit of a different story. Ultimately, if we hadn't dropped those stupid points against Fulham, no one would be talking about our poor start to the season or poor start 7 out of 9 games. So realistically, yeah, we've just been a little bit sloppy, and hopefully it's a wake-up call in time for you lot.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, to be fair, at the start of the season, I don't really think performances are massively important, especially like you're kind of trying to get into like the groove. But those kind of points which you made, I know you said you don't want to kind of put it down to one thing, but I do kind of see some sort of similarities with how United, we've started quite poorly. And I do think, I don't know if you agree, Yusuf, where I think that's kind of down to us trying to change our style of play, like a little bit similar to last season, how we started poorly and changed again. Yusuf, do you see us kind of persevering with this? I know Eriksen came back in and it was almost a bit more like last season, but how do you reckon we're approaching this game?
Yeah, no, I reckon we are going to persevere now because some of the players we bought, it makes it tough to go back to. So obviously last year we had, okay, De Gea was in goal. That's the entire base, the entire foundation of the team was wrong. So when your foundation's not there, the house collapses. So this time we've got Onana, and Onana is going to, just his presence is going to demand we stick with this. We keep trying to build on this. We're seeing now links with Sufyan Amrabat looking to apparently come on loan. If that comes over the line, I think that's a huge signing, especially ahead of Sunday. Marco Correa as well. There's very kind of mixed opinions on that signing, but we have to remember his best football came at Brighton in that kind of possession-based system, playing on the left of that back three. And he looked good then. I wouldn't have gone for a left back. I think it's a position you can afford to leave a little bit, especially with Dalot, Alvaro Fernandez. But I think we're going to stick with this style. Maybe Ten Hag will make some adaptations. I do think some adaptations are needed, but I don't see it being like last season where we just completely go the opposite way. I think we will continue play this way. I think against Arsenal, we're going to be on the back foot a lot. We have to accept that. But yeah, and on Arsenal, very quickly, actually, I saw links to Alexander Barr of Benfica. And if Arsenal sign him, right in your current team right now, right back is possibly your weakest position. In the way the team's currently structured, Bar's a huge upgrade. I think that is the kind of signing that just really elevates you.
Yeah, that's kind of a talking point as well, because obviously in previous games it's been kind of Saka versus Luke Shaw, and it's kind of like a joke online because I know some people abuse Luke Shaw no matter what, but a lot of people respect him and think that he's a top fullback. But whenever he plays against Saka, he kind of gets stripped defensively. I don't know whether it's their England relationship, but yeah, I mean, James, what is that kind of an area, especially in like recent games against United and in the upcoming week? Is that an area which you think Arsenal will target? That obviously Saka's one of your most dangerous players.
What target down your left hand side? I think actually one of the reasons why Shaw seems to show up every time he plays us is because the way your system is set up, Saka and Martinelli struggle most against when opposition wingers are running up and down the line and are willing to do the defensive work, so they double up on them and there's no space to go inside or outside. Whereas against United, I don't think Rashford is, whether he's willing to or not, I don't think Ten Hag instructs him to track all the way back and basically defend as a left back sometimes, which Martinelli does in our system. Ten Hag wants Rashford, I guess, to almost always be on that last line and offer an attacking threat, and I understand why. But as a byproduct of that, you've got Saka one-on-one against Luke Shaw, and to me, no matter who the defender is, you are not going to get much joy against Saka one-on-one. He will find space against you, and he will use his pace and power to get past you. And in all honesty, the goal Saka scored last year, he didn't even really get past Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw gave him half an inch, and then he punished you. So, I think if you're going to get anything out of this game, you do need to address our wingers. Obviously, that brings up a whole host of other problems, but I think Rashford and Anthony on the other side are going to have to put defensive shifts in. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long game for you.
Yeah, definitely, and that's probably why Anthony will start, because he is much better than Rashford on that aspect. But I do kind of agree. Rashford is almost getting told to cheat at times, I think, which can work on the transition. But like you said, especially with Arsenal, and I think you guys do feed Saka and Martinelli in those positions quite a lot. And when it's happening a lot of times a game, you're good. Even if a fullback's having a good game, Saka's going to get past him a few times, and Luke Shaw hasn't had his best games. But another kind of point of the upcoming game is the midfield battle. I think I know there's a talk about Havertz, and I don't know whether he'll start, but I think your guys' midfield, especially with Rice coming in, it looks quite strong, and that's almost been United's worst point, Yusuf. Or I guess it's a team structure, because like Ten Hag mentioned in his press conferences, it's to do with the space in between the defence and the midfield and the attack. But Yusuf, what are you thinking about that midfield battle, and who would you put in for United?
Right. So this is I'm going to go a bit outside. I love to go outside the box. I'm going to go a bit outside the box here. I'm not moving him because I don't want him in the midfield battle. All right. I'm moving him because I want a bit more strength in our defensive line with its current setup. I would play Casemiro as a right centre back against Arsenal. And then if we have Amrabat in on loan, I'd play him as our 6 and McTominay next to him. And again, like you should do it a bit differently. It's not that I don't want Casemiro in the midfield. It's just Martinez and Lindelof is not a physically strong enough back line to play against Arsenal. And I thought Casemiro has played well when he's played as a right centre back in his career a few times. So he did it for us once and was quite good there. So it's a bit of an outside the box one. It's a bit of like, all right, why are you moving your best defensive midfielder into your back line? But you need that physicality against Arsenal, so much of it. Forgetting the tactical side, they're a team that right now will just eat you alive physically. So Casemiro at centre back, a little less, space to defend, a little less, demand in that regard, but also just I think he's more capable of carrying out that centre back role than McTominay or Amrabat would be. And I think you like I said, you need those bodies in there. So Eriksen last year got overrun at the Emirates, and they're even stronger now. In fact, actually, that Saka goal, which James mentioned, sure gave Saka like a yard, but actually, I'd put that goal more on Eriksen. I thought Eriksen was more culpable than Shaw was for that goal. So I don't want Eriksen in that midfield battle against Arsenal. And yeah, so it's a little outside the box. Some people see this and think, what the hell are you going on about? But to me, that's the best solution to counter Arsenal from a physical standpoint.
I will support you on that statement and just add that you did write a piece on our website around a month ago stating this exact kind of potential move. So it's not just a reaction to Casemiro's particularly poor performances in the opening games. You actually did think it was kind of a possibility this season.
And I mean, I thought he was better against Forest. I know he had that one moment where Anthony Elanga completely burned him on a transition, but then I think people also forget a few minutes later, Morgan Gibbs-White was breaking out. Casemiro just in the way he does, he just completely kills off your transition. He did that. So swings and roundabouts, but yeah, against Arsenal, I think with Varane out, who has been our best player so far, in my opinion, probably. With him out, I think you have to really get some more physical quality in that back line. Again, you could try McTominay. It's just I trust Casemiro to play that centre-back role more.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I actually thought Yusuf was going to say to play Bruno in right midfield, which I thought would have been an interesting shout because I don't know if Amrabat is fit. You could theoretically play a midfield of Amrabat, Casemiro, and Eriksen, just because. I suppose even just Casemiro and Amrabat, because I do question if your midfield is coming up against Rice, Partey, and Ødegaard. Even with Amrabat in midfield and Casemiro in defensive midfield, that is just to me going to get dominated. And if you lose the midfield battle and you're not able to double up against our wing backs, I just wonder it's going to be relentless from Arsenal. We're going to pen you in your own half. Maybe I'm wrong, but everything to me feels like we should batter you. And whether we convert our chances or not is a different story. But I think we have every reason to be able to absolutely dominate that game in a similar way to the 3-2 last season. But I'd like it to be a more resounding result rather than that which we kind of scraped in the end because Rashford scored a brilliant goal and Martinez scored from that corner.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on it there, James. I was going to mention to you, what would you say is the midfield that you're expecting Arsenal to put out against United? Because it does seem like with the different options you've got now, it seems like it's kind of unsure what your best midfield three is. What do you think is the Arsenal midfield? Would you say it's that three which you mentioned before?
It very much depends on personnel available and what game specifically it is. In the community, I think we'll see a similar midfield that we did in the Community Shield, which was Partey, Rice, and Ødegaard at right centre mid. And I think we'll also see Gabriel come back into the team. And if that is the case, interestingly, if Havertz does start up front as he did in the Community Shield, we are going to have a very, very tall and physical team. So without you having Varane in the team, again, that could be another interesting subplot. The fact that I think we'll probably have about 5 or 6 players 6'2" and above. And I'm not sure, but maybe like Rashford at a push, but he's not exactly renowned for his heading. So that could be another interesting aspect of the game.
Yeah, it is weird. United don't have many tall players anymore, which we were kind of known for a few years ago. But yeah, Yusuf, I mean, James touched on it, how he thinks that the midfield kind of dynamic, we might get dominated. And I kind of thought this would be a perfect game if Mason Mount was available for that kind of maybe Bruno or Mount go out to that right-hand side and then you kind of pack the midfield. But with him not available, it's kind of unsure where United will go. And of course, there's other injuries. So kind of touch on the injury crisis at United at the moment. What do you think are the reasonings behind so many injuries, and how much do you reckon it will impact United in the coming weeks and months?
I think our preseason prep was very poor, really poor. Like you're flying from kind of New Jersey, so we're flying to America in the first place, New Jersey in the northeast of America, to Texas in the deep south, then to Las Vegas in the southwest to play 3 games. Generally, what's the point? And those are the only games that senior players, bar Varane and Martinez, who obviously Varane has retired internationally now, and Martinez was just coming back from injury. The senior players, Sancho too, but the senior players only really played in those games we didn't really get like a full game of the senior players, bar Lons, at Old Trafford. So I thought our preseason prep was quite poor. Even Ericsson himself said like it was just really tiring to do all of that traveling, all of the commercial events you have to attend when you go on these tours. And granted, it is important to connect with fans in other parts of the world, but at the end of the day, the football comes first. You do have to prepare. Our fitness levels coming into the season have been really poor. We can see it. I mean, granted, Varane is and always has been an injury-prone player, but he's not going down after 3 games for no reason, especially when Shaw's gone down, Mount's gone down. Varane especially has been covering a ton of space in that back line. So, yeah, it's just we didn't prepare well enough. The fitness
I don't know if you've noticed as well, there's been talk, again, this might be people just noticing something that isn't there, but there's been a lot of talk about the American pitches. And this, I actually read about this before players had even played on these American pitches. But there's a famous pitch, I can't remember which one it is, that a lot of American footballers used to do their ACL on, and they have returfed the pitch so people can say, oh, it's not the same pitch anyway. But what I've noticed is there have been a lot of ACL and MCL injuries coming into the start of the season, and if you trace them back, the majority of them, if not all of them that I've noticed, played on the American pitches in pre-season. So a lot of them are based on artificial turf, if not completely artificial turf, which seems to have caused a lot of problems, maybe in combination with the fact that players didn't get the rest they should have. Players were taking their friendlies more seriously than in previous years, perhaps because Ten Hag told them that it wasn't a friendly. But yeah, various reasons. But that was an interesting one. And I wonder if anything comes out of it.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, it is strange, isn't it? And sorry, it is strange because, like you said, I think because of how competitive the league is as well now with, like you said, Man City, you drop a point at the beginning of the season, you already feel like you're dropping behind. I do feel like that almost makes managers think that you might not be able to start slowly and build into the season. You've almost got to treat the pre-season as seriously as possible so then you can start flying. But when there's barely any football, and it's quite ironic that it was Varane who's been the most recent to fall to injury after a couple of weeks ago. He was the one complaining about the added minutes and the kind of the whole situation with how much football they're playing at the moment. So yeah, it's a bit worrying. But Yusuf, we've got one player back, Rasmus Højlund. He could have an impact. I mean, he's got to have impact. Anthony scored last season on his debut against Arsenal. Is it a bit of a written in the stars story for him to do the same?
I mean, I think Højlund will be on the bench. I don't think we will start him, and I don't think we should start him. I know Martial's fitness is something you have to manage carefully, but Højlund is the future. So, and he has just come back, so you can't just throw a young player in the deep end, especially at a place like the Emirates. Like you're not just throwing him in the deep end; you're throwing him in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in the current moment. So, I think he'll come off the bench.
Compliments coming.
I think, what he offers off the bench, he offers real like speed in behind against tired legs. That could be such an advantage. And I think actually, I was just thinking recently, we've not had enough of that off the bench. Bar Palistri, who's even then he's not a real speedster. But he's the only one who really provides that injection off the bench. Højlund is someone who will come on and really like. But even Arsenal and Nketiah last season came off the bench quite a bit when he wasn't starting, and he's a player who, he's not a rapid player, but just offers that kind of physical dominance. We've not had enough of that off the bench, so I think that's one thing I think will work in our favour with Højlund is that against Arsenal off the bench, he really offers something.
Yeah, and Garnacho as well. I think, to be fair, I think since he's been starting, it's not as big of an impact, but when he comes off the bench, it's a completely different game. So it could be him as well if he starts on the bench. But we'll move on to the predictions of the game. James, give us kind of, I mean, you kind of touched on it before, but how you see the game going and a score prediction, if you don't mind.
I think it will start as a very fiery game. I think Arteta will motivate the players. I think Ten Hag will motivate the players. And I think both teams will be very aggressive in the first 10 minutes or so. I think we might get a chance or two. You probably also will get a chance or two in the counter-attack from that. If there's a goal in that period, that could change things. If not, I think the game will settle down a little bit, as derbies naturally do. And I think when the game does settle down into a rhythm, it will be, with all due respect, a little bit like volleyball, to be fair, where you will be sat back with plenty of men behind the ball, and you'll probably be going long, maybe even from goal kicks now. That's a new weapon you have in your arsenal, where Onana can go all the way long to Rashford or Højlund when he comes on from goal kicks. So it does depend on us having the defensive discipline to not give you any room. But I do back us, especially with your, I guess, put together defence at the moment. I do back us to score goals. If you're looking for a score prediction, I think the game will probably end something like 3-1. And I think it would probably go something like 2-0 Arsenal, you'll score, and then we'll end up scoring one to finish the game off. I would absolutely snap your hand off for that right now. I think, as I say, maybe 3-1 is the theory behind the game, but what actually happens on the day could be something completely different. So I am excited but nervous.
Yeah, and Yusuf.
To be honest, I agree with James there. I think I was actually thinking that's the exact score order. Arsenal 2-0 up, United grab them back, they get one. I'm not too confident, if I'm being honest, but like James said, anything can happen. I don't like to take form into account for derby games, because they're the kind of games where a team can lose 5 in a row, come up against the team winning 5 in a row. The team that's lost 5 in a row wins on the day. They're very, very different games. And like Ten Hag said, we don't play friendlies. Granted, it's an actual league game now. That's a little joke. But I think he'll know like the importance of a result here. I think one thing I can say about Ten Hag, he's really made himself familiar with like the rivalries and stuff at the club. We've not been great away from home, as we saw a couple of weeks ago against Spurs, but I'm hoping that we really try sharp. Martial being fit gives me confidence, because I think in games like this, the fact he can trap the ball so well, hold it off, hold off defenders, that's a real big threat on the transition. He is the one who really knits those transition attacks together. We saw this a lot against Man City when, we used to do really well against them a few years back. He always terrorized them for that reason. And another thing, I think, especially if Partey is playing right back, what Martial's really good at is he's really good at moving away from goal, dragging a centre back with him, and then opening a passing lane to Rashford in behind. So those are the things that give me some kind of hope. But yeah, I'm going to go with that 3-1 Arsenal, sadly.
Okay, so I'll kind of chip in with mine. I'll be a bit more optimistic. I know, James, you mentioned we need to try and make the game a bit more chaotic. How we do that, there's a few different ways. Of course, Rashford will be important on the transition. Bruno, those are our 2 most important players. And if they have good games, we'll have a chance on the transition. I'll go for a 2-1 United. But like you both said, anything can happen. We could very well be embarrassed, but I'll go for a win. But it's going to be an interesting game, and hopefully we'll end the away curse to decent teams. So yeah, that's all we've got for today. It's been an interesting chat. Hopefully we might be able to let James back onto the channel after we've won 4-0. But okay. If not, we're definitely not going to let him on once Arsenal win. But yeah, no, thank you both for coming on. If you enjoyed the quick video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. James, could you let any Arsenal fans or any United fans who might be interested in what you say, where can they find you?
Literally just on Twitter, afcjames on Twitter with an X instead of the A. I thought that was creative at the time. I'm now trying to find out ways to get rid of that username. But yeah, just afcjames on Twitter. I tweet about all sorts of things football, not just Arsenal. But if you are a United fan, just be aware that I might try and wind you up. So yeah.
Yeah, I know all about that.
Lovely. Right. We'll see you in the next video, guys. Cheers.